In the final hour of the 24-hour event at Daytona, Porsche Penske driver Felipe Nasr fended off the charging Tom Blomqvist in the monstrous Cadillac V Series R from Action Express Racing. What ultimately led up to the finish of this event was truly incredible from all parties involved in the battle for the race lead. So this is my breakdown on how Porsche Penske took a historic win at the Rolex 24 at Daytona in 2024. IMSA went into the 62nd edition of the Rolex 24 knowing that 4 manufacturers would be present in the GTP category. These brands included Porsche, Cadillac, Acura, and BMW. It quickly became apparent that 2 of these manufacturers stood above the rest and would be the favorites to challenge for overall victory. These brands were Cadillac and Porsche. Cadillac brought 2 V Series R entries. One was the 01 Cadillac from Chip Ganassi Racing, and the other was the number 31 Whelen Engineering Cadillac from Action Express Racing. Meanwhile, Porsche brought 4 963s. 2 were the factory entries, the number 6 and number 7 Penske cars, and the other 2 were customer entries, one from Proton Competition and the other from JDC Miller Motorsports. Cadillac would qualify on pole position, with Pipo Derani obliterating the track record in the 31 Cadillac, previously set by Oliver Jarvis in 2019 driving the Mazda DPI. The 01 Cadillac would qualify just behind in second, with the 2 factory Porsches from Penske in 3rd and 7th overall. As the Rolex 24 began, Pipo Derani got a great start in the 31 Cadillac, but Felipe Nasr did the same in the number 7 Porsche and jumped Sebastien Bourdais in the 01 Cadillac, splitting the 2 V Series R, putting his Porsche in second position as they headed down into turn 1. During the first hours of daytime, it became clear that Cadillac had the faster car over Porsche, as the 01 Cadillac eventually got past the number 7 Porsche and started to battle for first with the sister Cadillac in the first few hours of this event. Porsche Penske was still involved for the overall lead battle, mainly with the 7 car rather than the 6, but it was clear that Cadillac had the upper hand during this first part of Daytona. But as night fell across the Daytona International Speedway, Porsche and their 963s, specifically the Penske entries, were very quick and could challenge Cadillac and even beat them. The Porsche 963s seemed to do better in the cooler track conditions at night. There was even evidence of this before the race began. The 963s were very competitive in the nighttime hours of the last year's Rolex 24, mainly with the number 6 entry. Then we saw evidence of this again at the 12 hours of Sebring last year, when both of the Porsches came alive in the cooler track conditions at night and were challenging for overall victory until, well, we all know what happened. The fact was, Porsche were running really good in these night conditions, and the number 7 car driven by Matt Campbell at the time got past the number 31 Cadillac into the lead of Daytona. And to be clear, this overtake was done out on track by the pure pace of the 963. It wasn't achieved in the pit lane or a mistake out on track from the Cadillacs. Porsche truly had the pace to fight for overall victory at Daytona. But it wasn't just about the pure pace of the 963 that would ultimately give Porsche Penske Motorsport that coveted Rolex 24 watch. It was also about the incredibly consistent reliability of the 963 Porsches. To my knowledge, the Porsche 963s never encountered any major reliability problems across this entire event, so both the Penske entries and the customer Porsches ran well. Last year's Rolex 24 saw the Penske 963s encounter problems, which meant that they weren't able to compete for the overall victory with manufacturers such as Acura or Cadillac. But the reliability problems were pretty much non-existent in 2024, and I think that just speaks of the progression that Porsche has made from last year to this year. Porsche was also the only manufacturer in the GTP category that didn't encounter any major reliability problems. A little over halfway into the race, the 01 Chip Ganassi Cadillac suffered a powertrain issue, which resulted in the car eventually retiring. And before that, Wayne Taylor Racing's Philippe Albuquerque stopped the number 10 Konica Minolta Acura just at the exit of the International Horseshoe, which ultimately took them out of contention for the race victory. Unfortunately, the BMW M Hybrid V8s also encountered some sort of mechanical problems, so this forced them several laps down and they were out of contention for the overall win. As the sun arose across the speedway, with around 5 hours remaining, the number 7 Porsche Penske was out in front, but the wheeling Cadillac was hunting it down for first position. Overall, the Porsche 963s were running really good, and the number 6 car was in third, with the customer entries not far behind. And with 4 of the GTP competitors suffering reliability issues in the nighttime hours, this meant that besides the Porsche 963s, only the number 31 Cadillac and number 40 Acura remained in the race for the overall victory. But as we neared the final hours of this event at Daytona, it became clear that there was mainly 2 entries in the battle for the overall lead. Those were the number 7 Porsche Penske and the number 31 Willyn Engineering Cadillac from Action Express Racing. I do think the second Penske entry, the number 6 car, had a very strong chance at taking the overall victory, but unfortunately the car was handed a few penalties across the event, and the number 6 Porsche locked up at the International Horseshoe due to cold tires, and so this set the entry back a bit. The number 7 Porsche and the number 31 Cadillac traded positions for the overall lead as the race progressed towards the final hour of Daytona. But as we soon found out, the Cadillac entry seemed to be very strong. It was very similar to the day before, when Cadillac showed incredible pace during the daytime hours, so it seemed Cadillac now had the upper hand over Porsche. At this point in the race, the number 31 Cadillac was looking very likely to win the event, especially in the hands of Tom Blomqvist, a very talented and experienced racer who had won the last 2 Rolex 24s at Daytona with MSR Acura. After a round of pit stops, the wheeling Cadillac was right behind the Penske Porsche as they headed down into the first turn of Daytona. Blomqvist was able to go side by side with Nasr, and actually both cars split the GT traffic and Blomqvist went around the outside to take the lead of Daytona. This was a very reminiscent move by Blomqvist to Hakkinen and Schumacher's battle at the F1 Belgian Grand Prix in 2000. After this sensational move, Blomqvist was able to pull a gap to Nasr in the number 7 Porsche by a few seconds and give Cadillac a better opportunity at winning this race. But then things changed with just an hour to go at Daytona, as a fire erupted on the number 12 Vasser-Sullivan Lexus. Thankfully, the driver Parker Thompson was able to get out of the car unhurt. But this resulted in the organizers introducing a full course yellow, which would bunch the field up and give Porsche a better opportunity at taking this win. Now, I think the on-track action after the full course yellow was definitely a factor into why Porsche Penske won the Rolex 24, but I think it wasn't the only factor. Under this full course yellow, Porsche's number 7 car and Cadillac's number 31 car pit at the same time for their final pit stop before the end of this event. But these pit stops actually resulted in a lead change, as the number 7 Porsche was actually able to just barely jump ahead of the number 31 Cadillac, which had been leading the race beforehand. I think that pit stop that got the Porsche ahead of the Cadillac was a perfect example of teamwork. Because it's not just about the driver or car that gets the manufacturer the overall victory. It's also about the crew themselves. Porsche Penske Motorsport worked as a team to achieve this result, and they were successful in doing so. As the full course yellow disappeared, it became a sprint to the finish, with around 30 minutes to go to decide who would win this historic 24-hour event, Porsche or Cadillac. Felipe Nasr in the number 7 Porsche led the field away from a charging Tom Blomqvist in the number 31 Cadillac, who was chasing his 3rd win in a row at Daytona. The fact is, the 2 cars were very quick, and the 2 drivers had a lot of talent and experience. What would happen would be that the Cadillac would be very quick, especially in the corners, but on the straight, it wouldn't be able to get past that Porsche Penske. Felipe Nasr in the number 7 car was just too quick down those straights. Now, I do want to mention that the BOP, balance of performance for this race, gave the Porsche 963 an increase of 22 horsepower, which is equivalent to around 17 kilowatts, where the power output was just barely increased for the Cadillac V-Series R, so Porsche most definitely had the upper hand on the straights. But even though the 963 was quick in a straight line, Nasr would still have to pull off an almost perfect stint to keep Blomqvist behind for over 30 minutes and cross the line first for Porsche. And mind you, that number 31 Cadillac was just under a second behind for the majority of the time. But Felipe Nasr miraculously prevailed. In the final few laps, Nasr also dealt with the slower GT traffic very well. Nasr tactically maneuvered his Porsche 963 around the slower traffic, and this resulted in him growing the gap to the Cadillac in those final few laps. And even though the finish was somewhat confusing, with the checkered flag being brought out just moments before the cars crossed the line, and by the way, IMSA did clarify this was a mistake, the victory still went the way of Porsche. In one of the most intense final hours in this event's history, the Porsche Penske Motorsport crew took victory at the Rolex 24 at Daytona, with Felipe Nasr successfully holding off Tom Blomqvist in the 31 Cadillac to take the number 7 Porsche to victory lane. This result broke many records, giving the German auto manufacturer Porsche their 19th win at the Rolex 24, their last coming in 2003 when the Racers Group took victory in a 911 GT car. And it also was the first time that the captain Roger Penske took victory at the Daytona 24-hour since 1969, which was 55 years ago. Drivers Felipe Nasr, Matt Campbell, Dane Cameron, and Joseph Newgarden took victory at the Rolex 24 for the very first time, and they helped return Porsche to where they belong in motorsport, winning 24-hour endurance races. What did you think about Porsche Penske Motorsport's win at the Rolex 24 this year? And are you happy to see Porsche return to winning ways in 24-hour endurance racing? Well, let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, I highly suggest you do so, considering I make endurance racing content mainly on WEC and IMSA every single week. And if you want to see another video, check out the options on the screen. So for now, that's it from me. I'll see you all in the next video.